People always ask me about the ticket, and I understand why. Because that's the part that stops them. One way. Not a round trip. Not a scouting month with a return date tucked in my purse. One way. At 68 years old, with everything I owned sold off behind me, and 2 suitcases in front of me. And they lean in and they say, "Weren't you terrified?" And I tell them the truth. I was. I was more frightened standing in that airport than I have ever been in my life. And right now, as I'm talking to you, 5 years later, I'm sitting on a porch, 1,000 feet up a green mountain on an island in the Philippines, and if I turn my head just a little, I can see the ocean going silver in the afternoon. And I want to say this plainly, because at 73, you stop dressing things up. No regrets, not one. So let me back up, because nothing makes sense if I just drop you in the middle. My name's Marjorie, Marge to anybody who knows me. I grew up outside Canton, Ohio, the kind of place where the plants left and the whole town just held its breath for 30 years. My mother cleaned houses for the families up on the hill and came home with her hands cracked and red, and I used to think that was just what hands looked like when you got old. I wasn't a good student, and I want to be honest about that, because people message me thinking you have to be somebody special to do what I did, and you don't. I spent 34 years as a school secretary, running the front office of an elementary school, the woman who knew every child's name and every parent's phone number, and got thanked for none of it. I married Walt when I was 24. He worked at the post office, and he had this quiet way about him, and the first time he made me laugh so hard I cried. I think I just decided right then. We had one boy, Danny, and the way our life worked never changed. We were both up early, both tired, and we passed each other in the driveway for about 4 decades. And there was this word that ran through our whole marriage, the word someday. Someday, Marge, let's see a warm ocean, the kind with the blue water in the magazines. I used to clip pictures of beaches out of the magazines in the school office and keep them in a kitchen drawer, and Walt would tease me, planning a trip we'll never take, and I'd say, "I'm keeping it ready." And I kept that dream ready for 40 years. Walt passed when I was 66, and then there wasn't a someday anymore. I found those clippings when I finally cleaned out the house. There's one in there that looks exactly, and I mean exactly, like the coast I can see from this porch. I've stopped trying to explain it. So there I was, 66, then 67, in a house that had gone enormous and silent, and Danny grown and out in Seattle, calling on Sundays. And I sat at that same kitchen table where my mother used to rub lotion into her cracked hands, drinking coffee with nobody in the house, and I did the math on a legal pad, and it didn't work. My Social Security and Walt's survivor benefit came to about $1,300, and in Ohio, that's the rent and the electric, and then you stop. That's not a life, that's waiting. And I want to be honest with you, that's exactly what I thought I was doing, waiting quietly for my turn to come. Let me tell you what changed, because it's almost embarrassing how small it was. A woman I used to work with, retired ahead of me, sent me a Christmas card with a photograph in it, and she's standing barefoot in front of a mango tree with the sea behind her. And I called her, and she told me numbers, and she wasn't bragging, that's the thing, the good ones never sell you. She said her house ran her about $400. She said a woman came 4 mornings a week and cleaned and did her laundry, and she paid her well, and it still came to less than her old cable bill. And something happened in my chest. I can only call the floor turning into a door. That night I couldn't sleep. I read about the Philippines until the sun came up, and I felt something at 67 I was sure I'd never feel again. It was hope. But hope is not the same as courage, and the courage took another year, because the reasonable voices came back the second the sun went down, and they sounded like common sense. They sounded like my own mother. You're a school secretary from Canton, Marge. You've never had a passport. You don't know a soul over there. What happens when you fall? And at your age you will fall. What would Walt think? What would Danny think? Selling the house the 2 of you paid off for 30 years to chase a fool notion on the other side of the earth. Now here's where I have to tell you about the ticket, because everybody wants to know why one way, and the answer isn't bravery. The answer is that I knew myself. I knew that if I bought a return ticket, I would use it. I knew that the first hard week, the first bout of homesickness, the first night I couldn't sleep for the Roosters, I'd look at that date on that ticket, and I'd run home to a house I'd already grown to dread, and I'd spend the rest of my life telling people about the time I almost did something. So I did the thing that frightened me most. I sold the house. I sold the furniture, the car, gave away 40 years of things to my son and the church and the neighbors, and I kept 2 suitcases and a box of Walt's photographs, and my mother's bottle of hand lotion, which is a strange thing to keep, I know, but I keep it. And I bought a ticket with no way back. And you would not believe how light that felt once it was done. What finally made me able to do it was my son. I told Danny over a video call, sideways, like a joke, "Your old mother's thinking about selling up and moving to the Philippines," and I braced for him to tell me I'd lost my mind. Instead, he got quiet and said, "Mom, when's the last time you sounded excited about anything?" And I didn't have an answer. And then he said the thing that broke me. He said, "I'd rather have a happy mum on a video call than a sad one down the street." And I learnt the practical parts, because 34 years in a school office makes you that kind of woman. The Philippines has a proper retirement visa, the SRV, and at 50 and over, with a pension over $800 a month, you park a refundable deposit in an accredited bank and pay a small yearly fee, and you can stay indefinitely, no border runs, which mattered enormously to a woman with a one-way ticket. And a foreigner can't own the land here. You can own the house, but never the dirt underneath it. So I rent, and I sleep just fine. Let me tell you the moment I knew I'd been right. The little airport, the heat coming up off the tarmac like an open oven, and these motorcycle taxis they called tricycles, buzzing everywhere like a swarm. And I'm 68 and jet-lagged and standing there with 2 suitcases and no way home. And I thought, "What have you done, Marge?" And we stop at a red light, and a little girl on the back of her father's motorbike, maybe 6, in her school uniform, looks over at this old grey American woman and just waves, this enormous grin, like she's known me her whole life, and her father laughs and waves too, at a stranger, at a red light, and something in my chest that had been locked since Walt died came loose. Now here's the life I built. I rent a little concrete house up in these cooler hills, tile floors, big windows, a porch that runs the whole front, a mango tree in the yard, $400 a month. And there's a woman named Maribel who comes 4 mornings a week, and I have to talk about her right, because the daughter of a cleaning lady does not take easily to being cleaned for. Maribel's 42, lives down the road with her husband and 3 kids. The first morning I followed her around trying to help, grabbed the other end of the sheet, and she stopped and said, "Mom, Marge, this is my job. You are making it harder." And it hit me like a truck, because I watched my mother do that exact work and come home with her hands cracked and red. So I made myself sit down. One of the hardest things I've done here. I pay her well above the going rate, and a bonus at Christmas. And when her youngest needed an operation on his ear, I covered it, and it cost me about 1 old cable bill. And that money is putting her oldest through nursing school. My whole month, everything in, lands around $1,000, and that check covers it with money left over. At 73, for the first time in my life, the money comes in faster than it goes out. Now the hard parts, straight, because anybody selling you only sunsets is selling you something. The heat in April sits on you like a wet blanket. The rainy season floods the roads and the power goes out. The paperwork tests your soul. And there are typhoons. And my second-year one came through, and I sat in the dark at 70, listening to the mango tree groan, thinking, "What have you done, you old fool?" And there is no ticket home. And that thought was very loud that night. That's real, and I won't sand it down for you. But you know what happened the next morning? Before I'd even sorted myself out, there was a knock, and it was Maribel's husband and 2 neighbor boys, soaked to the bone, come up the road to clear my gate. They had their own roofs to worry about. They came to mine first. Healthcare surprised me the good way. A doctor sees me in 20 minutes and sits with me, and it costs a fraction of an American copay. But for anything truly major, A lot of us fly to Cebu or Manila, and at 73, you think hard about that and keep money set aside. And there are lonely nights on this beautiful porch, missing Walt after 42 years, because the view doesn't fix that. You bring your grief with you. It just gets to sit somewhere prettier. But here's what 5 years has taught me about that one-way ticket. I thought I was giving up my safety net. What I was actually giving up was my excuse. Because with no way back, I had to make a life here, and so I did. I learnt to cook adobo badly. I learnt the names of everyone on this road. My neighbor brings me food for no reason but that she cooked too much and thought of me, and when I had a fever, 3 different families sent somebody up to check on me. Back home, I lived next to the same people for 20 years, and we waved. People ask if I have regrets 5 years later, and I've got exactly one. It's not the ticket, it's not the house or the furniture or any of it. It's that I waited until 68. So if you're out there tonight thinking it's too late, that your chance is behind you, I'm 73 years old on a porch on a mountain, and I'll tell you what nobody told me. You're allowed. You're actually allowed to go. It's going gold over the valley now, the mist coming back up the hills. In a little while, Maribel's husband is going to putter by on his tricycle and honk hello, and I'm going to sit here a while longer, 5 years in the life I almost talked myself out of. The school secretary from Canton, 2 suitcases and no way back, up on the hill looking down at everything. I carried you here, I tell Walt. We finally got to our someday. And I promise you, whoever you are, you're allowed to go too.